In this intense near-death experience, former gay man Zachary Blackwood comes face-to-face with an unsettling reality about the afterlife, which ultimately reshapes his entire life. His story is one you won't soon forget.
My name is Zachary Blackwood. I'm 47 and live in Burlington, Vermont. Before I share my experience, it's important to understand who I was. I lived in a cozy house near Lake Champlain, working as a graphic designer for a local ad agency. I was openly gay and had been in a committed relationship with Marcus for 3 years. The day began like any other. I was driving to work in my Subaru, sipping my usual caramel macchiato, surrounded by vibrant fall colors and cool, refreshing air. After finishing a call with Marcus about our weekend plans, it happened. A huge moose suddenly appeared on Route 7. In Vermont, moose crossings aren't rare, but nothing prepares you for a 1,500-pound animal standing right in front of you. I swerved sharply, but at 65 miles per hour, my car spun out of control. The last thing I remember was my coffee cup flying as my car flipped down a steep slope, crashing into several trees before coming to a halt in a ravine. The crash was severe. The driver's side was crushed, and I was pinned between the steering wheel and seat. A passing truck driver noticed my car's taillights through the trees and called for help, but getting to me wasn't easy. Rescuers struggled with the steep ground. After an hour, they cut me out, but by then, I'd lost a lot of blood, had 4 broken ribs, a punctured lung, internal bleeding, and a severe head injury. I recall bits of the rescue. The sound of metal being cut, voices shouting, the helicopter's loud whirring. They flew me to the University of Vermont Medical Center in Burlington, where doctors told me later that I died twice in the helicopter, once for 3 minutes, then again for 4 minutes. Marcus was at work when he got the call and rushed to the hospital, but I was already in surgery. The doctors gave me only a 20% chance of surviving. I went through multiple surgeries to stop the bleeding and repair the damage to my organs. But what I saw in those moments when my heart stopped changed my entire outlook on life, death, and reality itself. This experience wasn't like the calm, loving visions you often hear about in near-death stories. What I saw was something completely different, something that would stay with me forever. Before this happened, I was content with my life. I had a loving partner, a good job, and felt no need to question my beliefs. Raised Catholic, I hadn't been to church since high school. Religion didn't play a role in my life, and I thought that if God existed, He would accept me as I was. But in those minutes when I was clinically dead, I realized just how wrong I'd been. This experience shook me to my core, forcing me to confront truths I'd avoided for years. What I saw in those moments between life and death changed not just my beliefs but the entire direction of my life. When my heart stopped, everything changed. It didn't feel like falling asleep or blacking out. It was instant, crystal clear. I felt myself separate from my body, hovering over the helicopter, watching the paramedics work on me below. Strangely, I felt detached, as if watching someone else's story. Then came the tunnel. Not a peaceful light, but a whirling force pulling me in quickly, like a vacuum. It was terrifying. Colors I'd never seen before swirled around me, accompanied by a low, humming sound that I felt in my entire being. Moving through this tunnel, I sensed my entire life unfolding in front of me. It wasn't like memories playing back. It was experiencing everything at once, feeling the weight of each choice. I felt every lie I'd told, every hurt I'd caused, every selfish decision. The deepest revelations were about my relationships. I saw Marcus, but not with the love I was used to feeling. Instead, I saw how our relationship, which I had always believed was love, was actually causing harm to both our souls. Each moment together showed up as dark spots on our spirits, like ink drops in clear water. I saw myself as a child, feeling different from other boys. I remembered the confusion, the fear, and eventually, the defiance against traditional beliefs. But now, from this perspective, I saw how each step away from my early faith led me further from the truth. This tunnel journey felt like it lasted for hours, though it must have only been seconds. Then suddenly, everything stopped. I was in a vast, indescribable space, not light or dark, just there. And I wasn't alone. A presence drew near. There wasn't a physical form, but I immediately knew who it was. Jesus Christ himself. Recognition flooded me with certainty, as if remembering something deeply familiar. His presence was overwhelming, a mixture of love and authority that made me want to kneel. This wasn't the gentle Jesus from my Sunday school memories. This was the King of Kings, the Judge of all. In his presence, every excuse I'd made for my life crumbled. There was no hiding from him or myself. He didn't use words, but his message came directly into my thoughts. I understood he loved me with an intensity that almost hurt, but his love didn't mean he accepted every choice I'd made. I saw that my lifestyle, which I'd convinced myself was right, was actually against his design. The message was clear. My orientation wasn't the sin. The sin was choosing to act on it, to embrace it as my identity. I saw how my choices affected not only me but those around me. Each time I encouraged others to embrace their own similar choices, I'd unknowingly led them further from salvation. Then came the hardest part. Jesus showed me others, many souls who'd made the same choices. I saw them in what felt like a waiting place, not quite hell, but nowhere near heaven. They were stuck in their own justifications, unable to move on because they wouldn't face the truth of their choices. I noticed many of them had been religious, even Christians, but had interpreted scripture to support their lifestyle instead of aligning with God's true design. I saw how this misinterpretation built a barrier between them and genuine salvation. Then Jesus revealed something that made me shudder. I saw glimpses of hell, not like cartoon images, but something more horrifying. It was a place completely cut off from God's love, where souls faced the full weight of their choices. I realized that hell wasn't a punishment God created out of anger. It was the natural outcome of choosing to live separated from him. The souls there had made their choice during life, and now that choice was final. Next, Jesus showed me the truth about sexuality and gender as he intended. I saw how the union of male and female was more than physical. It held a spiritual truth reflecting God's relationship with humanity. I saw how modern culture's embrace of different lifestyles wasn't progress but a clever form of deception. Every move away from traditional marriage and gender roles was a step further from divine truth. I witnessed the spiritual consequences of pride parades, gender surgeries, and same-sex marriages. In this experience, from a divine viewpoint, I could perceive the spiritual darkness that enveloped the celebrations around me, even though they seemed joyful and lighthearted on the surface. What cut the deepest was realizing the influence my activism had on others. Each time I had advocated for LGBTQ rights, I had unknowingly led people away from the path of salvation. The responsibility of this realization weighed heavily on me. Jesus revealed specific instances, conversations I'd had, posts I'd shared on social media, and young people I'd impacted. Each memory felt like a weight on my soul, burdening me with the knowledge of how my words and actions had affected others. Yet, even as I saw this, I didn't feel condemned by Jesus. I felt only his love and his intense desire for me to understand the truth. He showed me how many of my gay friends secretly struggled, despite the happiness they displayed. Then, I was shown two different futures for my life. In one path, I continued as I was, ultimately facing the consequences of an unchanged heart. In the other, I embraced truth, left my lifestyle, and helped others do the same. The differences between these two futures were stark and unmistakable. I realized that my same-sex attractions weren't my fault. They stemmed from various influences and experiences in my life. However, it was my responsibility to choose how I acted on them. Jesus assured me that he would grant me strength to resist these desires, even if they didn't vanish in this life. I was then shown people who had left the gay lifestyle and found joy in living according to truth, despite the struggles they endured. I saw them receive crowns in heaven, symbolic of their faithfulness and endurance on earth. Through this part of the experience, I grasped a profound insight. True love doesn't mean affirming every choice. It's about guiding others toward God's truth, even when it's hard. Then, the scene shifted. I found myself in what seemed to be a heavenly courtroom, but instead of being judged, I was given a choice. I could return to earth with this newfound understanding, or I could face judgment then and there. The weight of the decision was immense. I knew that if I returned, I'd have to transform my life entirely. This would mean losing friends, facing criticism, and ending my relationship with Marcus, whom I deeply cared for. However, staying would mean confronting judgment for my unrepented sins. Jesus showed me that my return would serve a greater purpose. My testimony could guide others in similar struggles. I was given a glimpse of the support I'd have if I returned. Genuine Christians willing to help, counselors who understood spiritual struggles with sexuality, and allies I didn't expect. One of the most touching revelations was seeing how my story could save others. I was shown people, some familiar, others unknown, whose lives would be impacted by my decision to speak the truth. Their eternal destinies could shift because of my willingness to share my experience. Before I made my decision, I had one final vision. I saw myself speaking to large audiences, sharing my testimony, and leading others to find freedom and truth. I saw the joy of those who embraced healing and restoration, aligning with God's design for their lives. But I also saw the cost. I saw myself called a bigot, a traitor to the LGBTQ community, facing rejection from former friends, social media backlash, and even threats. Yet, through it all, I saw the peace that comes from living in truth. My choice became clear. With both fear and determination, I decided to return. Once I made this choice, an overwhelming sense of peace and purpose washed over me, even as I anticipated the challenges ahead. Just before returning to my body, I received one last message. My mission was to love, not condemn, to guide others toward the truth I'd found, with compassion and understanding, always remembering that I, too, was once unaware of these truths. When I awoke in the hospital, it felt like I had been given a new life. The physical pain was intense, but nothing compared to the spiritual awakening I had experienced. Marcus was by my bedside, holding my hand, but I knew that things would never be the same. Explaining my experience to him broke both our hearts. He thought my head injury was clouding my judgment, believing I'd come back to my senses in time. But I knew that what I had seen was real. I found a supportive church and began the challenging path of transformation. Some days were harder than others, as the same-sex attractions didn't disappear overnight. But now, I had the strength to resist. My story quickly spread on social media. As I expected, I faced strong backlash from the LGBTQ+ community. Former friends accused me of internalized homophobia and betrayal. But for each person who rejected me, another reached out privately, expressing doubts about their own path. 2 years later, I now lead a support group for those questioning their identity or seeking to leave the LGBTQ+ lifestyle. It's not about forcing change. It's about sharing truth and love and supporting those choosing God's path. The accident that nearly ended my life actually saved it, and not just mine. Every week, I receive messages from people finding hope and healing through my testimony. Some choose to leave the gay lifestyle, others are still grappling with their choices, but all of them know they are loved by God. My near-death experience taught me that true love sometimes means speaking hard truths. The eternal consequences are too great to stay silent. Yes, I lost my old life, but I gained something far more valuable, the peace of living in truth.
If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to ring the notification bell to keep up with more life-changing testimonies. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today.